The way I see is once people have bank accounts and have a smartphone and they're hooked up with UPI, they're already included. Our role is to figure out how to democratize financial products to empower them. I don't let one side take over the other. For example, I had a busy last couple of weeks, but it was super important for me to go to the game with my daughter, although it was just a one day in Ahmedabad. So sometimes you have to just make sure that you are making time for the things outside of work. Leadership is not a template. It's very situational. So you really need to have that news for sizing up the opportunity, understanding is it a risk, is it an opportunity, is it a crisis, is it a BAU? What we look for is we don't necessarily look for payment experts, because anybody who claims to be a payment expert should smell the coffee. But what we really look for is people who have a strong builder gene, who are not afraid to make mistakes, but who are great learners.
I don't know if you cook, but if you do, and if you were to invite me, what would you cook?
Good story.
Welcome to Amazon Unplugged. I'm Rajiv Sharma, Director of Talent Acquisition at Amazon and your host on this podcast journey. Join us as we get up close and personal with incredible leaders who drive Amazon. So get ready to become a part of this engaging conversation.
Welcome to Amazon Unplugged. Our guest has been at Amazon for 14 years. Apart from being a long-term Amazonian, he's also one of the leaders who've been at the forefront of driving innovation and change. As the Vice President for Payments for Emerging Markets, he's one of the leaders who looks forward to innovating new products every day. Under his leadership, his team is constantly improving Amazon Pay to make digital payments trusted, convenient, and rewarding. Welcome, Mahendra. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So, Mahendra, I heard about your love for cricket. Did you get to see any World Cup match in person?
I did. So it's one of my rituals over many years. So I try to go for at least one World Cup game. My first one was 1987. Don't judge my age, but and since then, barring the one in the West Indies, I've been to virtually every one. So I did go to a few of the games, including a couple here in Bangalore and a couple of big ones in Ahmedabad.
Wow, nice. And what was the most memorable one of this World Cup?
The first one in Ahmedabad, where India took on Pakistan, was definitely a big one. The results were favorable for us, but the game wasn't as exciting. The second one was the finals, where the game was quite exciting. The results, unfortunately, were not favorable. But it was good fun to go there with my daughters, and they're starting to enjoy cricket, and so it was good to be there and be with 130,000 people screaming, and then later on going quiet.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a emotional roller coaster, to say the least.
You've been at Amazon for a fairly long time, 14 years, and you've done an array of roles, from general management to product, and we're leading various different teams. Could you talk to me about your journey and how's the journey been over the years?
Yeah, it's been 14 years. It'll almost be 15 now. So before Amazon, I did a number of years in consulting, which was a good sort of foundational learning ground. I think my first stint with Amazon was as an intern when I was in business school. And I joined a team which at that time was called Instant Website and later became Web Store, where we used to enable our sellers on our marketplace create their own websites. And after my first couple of days on my internship, my manager essentially sent me off to one of the sellers saying that, hey, I really don't want you to spend time in the office. I want you to be a seller for the next 4 or 5 weeks. Learn what it takes to sell, and then come back with what the needs are, what the pain points are with our product, so we can then guide our product teams to build the right stuff that is needed by customers. So I thought that approach was quite unique. Later on, I realized there is a principle called customer obsession that we live and die by, but that kind of gave me a very strong insight and perhaps a liking for the culture of the place, which was, again, very first principles driven, kind of go ask the customer, sit with the customer, be the customer. So I was literally taking phone calls for the seller from irate customers who were calling saying that their music boxes weren't delivered. And that was like a huge amount of learning, or spending time with the seller and his daughter after hours, figuring out how to rank on, back then there was no Google, it was like Yahoo search engine. So yeah, I think did a bunch of that stuff. And after a few years of consulting, kind of came back to Amazon. This time I joined our fulfillment by Amazon team. So again, it was a new product for Amazon. We were learning how to help sellers sell through FBA and make their shipments Prime eligible. And so that was a great learning experience of how to build a new product for the seller ecosystem and make it successful, and then also take it to multiple countries. So did that for a few years, and then India came calling. Moved to India to launch our first business here called Jungly.com, which was in the world of organizing the unorganized. So how do you build a catalog in a country like India? How do you get sellers to list on the website? How do you build kind of sachet products for them to do fulfillment, do payments? So I really enjoyed that experience for a few years, and then we rolled that into Amazon. And then I took on Amazon Home Services, which was really helping us build a network of service providers who could service our product orders for installations, troubleshooting, and so on and so forth. So that was like another completely different experience of how do you work with service providers, how do you kind of help them serve our customers better, what kind of tools, mechanisms do you need to enable that. So we built that out for a few years, and then next I took on payments for India, and that was like again a steep learning curve. It's a completely different world in and of itself, payments. So learned a lot there, still learning. And then over the past year, I've been looking at payments across all emerging. So I think overall, if I look at my journey, I would summarize it as a very steep learning curve, and where I really feel privileged that Amazon thought I was worthy of some of these bets that we are making, and even without any experience, kind of back me up in trying to make it successful. So I think that's something that I cherish. And people keep saying that, hey, like, how's Amazon as a place? And I said, like, if I just going by my experience, I think about myself as an entrepreneur, right? Like, so it's like you're taking on new challenges which are uncharted, trying to frame the problem, trying to structure the solution, and then just kind of relentlessly working for multiple years to make something happen. So it's been very exciting, and hope the next many years will be likewise.
Oh, thank you, and very inspiring to see the journey, from being an intern to be able to lead through multiple countries and geographies, working across, an array of functions and trying to solve different problems. I am curious to ask one follow-up question. So when taking those decisions of switching roles, and taking on something new and challenging, how do you take those bold bets?
I think it's perhaps the same sort of questions that we ask as a company when we are taking on some new challenges, right? Is that, firstly, it's like, is there a real customer problem that we are looking to solve that is really hard and complex and going to take some serious effort to solve? Two is, can I, as an individual, bring something to solving it uniquely? Whether it is just the knowledge of the space, or whether it is just the energy in terms of taking on something new and complex, whatever it is. So what unique competencies, capabilities can I bring to solving the problem? And third is like, is it a large enough opportunity for the company where, yes, it's a hard problem, I can do something about it, but is that going to have like a large payoff for the company? So I think you really going to look at those three things, and if I feel convinced about it, and then one more thing is, of course, the team itself and the people surrounding the problem. I've been very fortunate to have like the same manager for almost the past decade, which has really helped in terms of both me having the confidence to take on the problem, but the other side also having the confidence to push the problem at me. So that's been fun.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And in terms of, specifically talking about payments, right? You've been the one who's been driving payments for Amazon, what have been the problems that you've been trying to solve from an Indian context? That's one. Okay, was there a gap that was to be filled from a digital payments perspective? And then at an overall level, what's the vision that the payments function has, or Amazon Pay has, in terms of disrupting what's happening in the market?
That's a good question. It's something which, if I just reflect on my own journey for the last 5 years, has evolved in terms of how we look at it. I think it started out very simple, saying that, hey, when customers in India are trying to pay for our e-commerce orders, they typically have 2-3 problems. One is, if they're trying to pay digitally with their card, they experience failures. Almost like 1 in every 4 payments used to fail. Number 2, a lot of customers do not, even if they have cards, like debit cards, and they want to buy something large that doesn't fit into their monthly budget. They don't necessarily have the facilities like an installment program or so on and so forth to buy it. So affordability was the second problem. So payment friction was the first one. Affordability was the next one. The third one was 85% of this country earns in cash. So the first 2 solutions don't matter. So I think that problem statement sounded very exciting, of how do you solve for this, and we kind of went about, and you have to remember, this is like pre-UPI days, right? And so UPI was just about coming on the horizon. So we went about designing solutions for each of these problems individually, about how to simplify payments, improve success rates, make payments more trusted, how to enable affordability for customers on our platform when they're shopping for whatever it is that they're looking to buy, and then figuring out how to make digital payments themselves more accessible to consumers by designing new solutions like the wallet. And it's not just a wallet, but it's a wallet that you can load cash in. And it's not just a wallet that you can load cash in, but you can load cash in at your doorstep when you're taking an Amazon delivery, available at 99% of PIN codes across India. So I think it now zooming back, it's like we kind of tried to say, hey, like there's an access problem. Customers can't access our service because they don't have the right mechanism to pay. They have an affordability problem because they want to buy something that their savings or whatever in the bank account don't allow them to buy. And then there is an experience problem that you're looking to solve. So I think that's kind of where the foundation of the problems that we looked at. And then as we started developing some of the products which were rather unique, like this wallet product, etc., we realized that customers need to see, our customers need to be able to use these products, not just for one use case like shopping on Amazon, but more universally to really drive adoption. So that's where we then said, okay, maybe we need to let them do what they do every day, which is they pay their bills or recharge their phone or send money to a contact or pay at a local shop. So that's when we kind of scaled the acceptance of these products beyond just stores to other use cases, as we call them, or other categories. So that's kind of been the journey in India. And then when we started looking at emerging countries at large across Latin America, MENA, APAC, we found that some of these problems still hold in these countries as well. There's a problem of access. There's a problem of affordability. There are experience-related gaps that exist. And so, but at the same time, it is not, each place has its own nuance. So you can't just think it's a single template that you can replicate. So you have to really adapt to the local nuances, whether those are in terms of customer behavior, regulations, competition, etc., to design the right solutions for the right product. But I think broadly now, when we look at some of these marketplaces, there are a few trends that are very exciting. Instant payments as a trend is really taking off in every country. I think UPI by and far is the most successful implementation and success story, if you will. But then we have Pix in Brazil, which is really growing gangbusters. You have a Pay Now in Singapore. You have a Pay To in Australia. Similarly, there are new payment systems coming up in Saudi and UAE and the Middle East. So instant payments as a trend is something that we see coming up in a big way across the emerging world. Similarly, what I call sachet affordability products. So much like you had a big credit card, but now you have these smaller sachet products which are like BNPLs, buy now, pay later. It's a very similar trend if you were to pass in the FMCG or CPG world. When shampoos, if you recall, growing up, suddenly went from a big bottle to a small sachet that everybody could afford. Same thing with the Colgate Ka Chota Packet ad that we used to have. Same thing with the Pan Parag getting sized down to a sachet. And the rest is history. So I think you're seeing a trend towards sachetizing of credit through BNPLs and installment programs, etc. And the same thing on the access side, you're seeing solutions like the wallet taking different forms. So, for example, in Mexico, people go to a local shop, a local convenience store to load their wallet and use it. Or there are postpaid solutions like pay on delivery, what we know in India, but there is pay till delivery, or there is pay at a local store that we see in Brazil and Mexico and some of these, not Brazil, but Mexico and some of the other countries, Egypt, for example. So I think what we are seeing is there are some common problems. Each market, very fascinatingly, has developed locally nuanced solutions that work for that customer. And so the fun part is like really figuring out what are the common threads to pull on to really improve the experience of consumers.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. And it's interesting to know that there are some common problems across different countries, especially in the emerging markets. So sometimes what could be in India first is being looked at as a possible solution for some of the other emerging markets, and maybe vice versa.
No, absolutely. Just give you an example, right? Like something that the team in Mexico has been doing, it's called cash on pickup. Again, it's trying to solve the problem of a cash customer who can go to a local shop, give the cash and pick up the delivery that they've ordered on Amazon. And we are saying, hey, I think if this works, why would it not be relevant in India? Should we consider that? Similarly, like if I think about some of the other solutions that have been built in India, which is like the UPI story, for example, it's not just about the payment method UPI, but really all the things I can do with UPI. And there are some other places where we can use that idea to build our customer engagement with our app. So I think there's a lot of commonalities that way, but I think you have to be very careful to not just pattern match too easily because local nuances do matter. That's why even a McDonald's has to customize its burger for the Indian consumer, right? Like so.
Absolutely. I was talking to my father, and it's very interesting. One of the things he mentioned about digital payments, and more on the inclusion side. He said, during his early days, he saw a lot of daily wage workers would lose money because they would save up all the money in cash, and then they would travel to their villages from the big cities, to keep that cash. And, they didn't have access to banking as much earlier. A lot of times, the money would get stolen or lost. And the need for sometimes to take a day off just to, go and, stand in the queue and do deposit the money. A lot of those problems that we don't even think about are real problems are now getting solved through the inclusion because of the digital payments.
No, absolutely. And I think the regulators, the government, the overall ecosystem has a big role to play in all this. I think UPI is one aspect of the overall India stack, right? Like that enables this. I think you have digital KYC and Aadhaar and a bunch of other things that are powering this underlying ecosystem. And I think the role for us there is also critical in terms of the way I see is once people have bank accounts and have a smartphone and they're hooked up with UPI, they're already included.
Yeah.
Our role is to figure out how to democratize financial products to empower them. So it's from inclusion to empowerment. I think it's still a big journey, and that's where I see the role of some of these sachet products with embedded experiences in your shopping. So I no longer have to go to a bank to get that credit. I'm at a retailer's place, whether it's a website or a physical retail store. Whereas a part of that journey where I'm looking to buy that mobile phone or that scooter is the first experience of credit that I'm getting. And it was fascinating because, I mean, again, like you said, in India now we do this online while shopping on Amazon. You can take a credit line and make a purchase. But it was fascinating. Like I think we were in Mexico and we go to a retail store. It was a giant retail store. At the front of the store were two-wheelers. And then you could go to the store and it had everything from cookers to mattresses to phones to what have you. And I was like, and at the end of it was a bank, like a full-on bank, right? Like there were people sitting there to withdraw money and talk to the cashier, and there was somebody selling something else. I was like, what is this? And the teammate I was going there with explained that, so look, most of the customers coming here are looking to buy white goods. They have an affordability need. The reason there's a motorbike at the front of the store is because that is the one that has a high need of installment-based solutions. And it's also the one that has the lowest loss rates, right? So that's where the credit journey of the customer starts. And then when they finally decide to buy, they go back into the bank and get the credit and then drive away. So I just found that embedded experience in the physical retail shopping journey quite fascinating. So I think that's
it is. I'd love to see one of the days how that looks like. Leading a global team across different countries and geographies, how do you listen to the requirement from the local market perspective, and then how do you also ensure that there is a core and common that all of the teams come together? So the balance between local and global, and how do you drive that as a leader?
I think it's a great question, and I think it's something that I'm increasingly working on figuring out how to strike that balance. Because, as I said earlier, it's very easy to pattern match, but then the local customer doesn't care that you have built a great UPI product in India if I need Pix in Brazil, and Pix has its own requirements. So I think what's super important is to be connected to not just the team, but to the local customers. Because it's easy for me sitting here in India to really understand all the different payment products, because I'm a daily user of those payment products. But I'm not in an Egypt, or I'm not in an Australia. So I think having that local context is super important. So personally, I try to travel as much as I can and spend time not just in the office, but out there really trying to understand. Now, of course, because we have our own websites in these countries, and I, in addition to English, also know a little bit of Spanish, try to play around with the websites to see how the payment experience is. But then that kind of keeps giving you a little bit more understanding of what could be the customer problems. But then again, because it's payments, I go through the whole site and then I go on the payments page and then I'm like, oh, but I don't have Pix. So really then it is about, you have to make that extra effort to really live the local customer experience. So being in the country, just walking through the experiences, sitting side by side with real customers is something I personally find very enriching and valuable. The second thing is, there are also within teams, there are cultural nuances in terms of how things are done, and kind of really adapting to that is super crucial as well. So really expanding out the communication that you have with different teams through collaborative channels like Slack or Chime, I think becomes very valuable. Because then just that staying in touch to just understand how the other team thinks about a particular problem, how is it looking to address a particular solution, I think becomes very valuable. Thankfully, at a place like Amazon, our company culture is so sort of unique, but also fairly well percolated, that I haven't had the need to kind of bring people on board about how we look at problems. It's always customer backwards, diving deep, really learn and be curious. I think those things really help think big. And then the last thing I feel, it's really like the time zone difference, right? When you're dealing with teams from Sao Paulo to Sydney, I mean, you don't really have a good time in the day, right? Like, so really time management becomes very critical in terms of how you're time slicing throughout the day, to ensure that you're able to listen, because it's not enough to just have like a quarterly formal review. I think you need to be available to the team to brainstorm on a certain thing or to really deep dive into a particular problem. So I think time management becomes also crucial. So I think I would say 3-4 things, right? One is really kind of being there in the markets to understand the local customer experience. 2 is really kind of having all the right communication tools, whether it is collaboration tools, whether it is in-person meetings, regular reviews to stay connected with the team. And then 3 is just time management across so many different time zones. So I think those are the 3-4 things that I feel I'm learning. I think just it's not it's something that you have to get used to.
Yeah, I there was a time I was leading talent acquisition team across Japan, Australia, Singapore, India, and Dubai, and then I had my leadership team sitting out of Seattle. So I mean, good to get some tips from you on how time management. But how do you balance your own personal time?
See, I think time management or time slicing, whatever you call it, right? If you use a certain measure to figure out like what are you putting your time towards and what is the return you want to get from it, it allows you to prioritize things very quickly. And then you can use tools like whatever that Eisenhower 2x2 that everybody talks about. I think it's a good prioritization tool, because it's not just the teams and the work. You also have to pay the rent and you have to take the kids to swim class and all those different things, right? So I think I try to use that sort of 2x2 kind of a technique to manage time. But I think more importantly is I don't let sort of one side take over the other, right? I think it was, for example, like I had a busy last couple of weeks, but it was super important for me to go to the game with my daughter, although it was like just a one day in Ahmedabad. So we kind of flew out in the morning of the game at like 5 a.m., got there, did the game, came back the same night. So sometimes you have to just make sure that you're making time for the things outside of work. So just striking that harmony between the different priorities is how I look at it. And at the end of the day, like if you're having a good time at work, you'll be happy at home, and vice versa. So I'm really a firm believer in that. And so just making sure that some of the everyday pet peeves are addressed. Like for example, like small things can become annoyances, right? Like if your charger in your laptop is not working and then you have to like sit on a plane without something like that, then okay, like so you just have to take care of some of these smaller things, and then I think it's quite easily manageable. I think my pet peeve is like if the phone or the watch discharges too fast, it just like throws me off, right? Like so I really have to make sure I can show you in my backpack, it's like I have a whole charging unit, right? Like so you ask me like how do I stay charged? It's like I have my chargers with me all the time, right? Like and it's then you're good.
So Mahendra, do you have a personal leadership philosophy? I know it's a very heavy word, and how that has evolved over the years.
It is a heavy word, and I think these days there are so many of these philosophies floating on platforms like LinkedIn that I'm really scared of expressing mine in a public audience. But no, I think if I were to simplify it to a few basic principles that I've held dear, and when I talk about leadership, I don't necessarily mean if you're managing a large team or organization, but even as an individual, I think there are 2-3 things that I feel have helped me. Number one is purpose. Are you really somebody who is motivated by something larger than you? I think that's something that can keep you at that problem for a long time and help you inspire people to come along the journey with you. So that's something that I kind of seek out myself, saying, hey, what is the purpose with which I'm doing something? It gives you that intrinsic motivation, that charge, that energy to pursue something big. The second I feel is leadership is not a template. It's very situational. So you really need to have that news for sizing up the opportunity, understanding is it a risk, is it an opportunity, is it a crisis, is it a BAU, to really know when to step in and drive towards the right outcome, or when to step back and let the team or the org take over. And I often use this example of we started with cricket, so the 2011 final, where Dhoni promoted himself to keep the left-right combination going. He just thought about that situation and saying, hey, like, this is where I want to make sure that there's a right-left combination going. So I think a lot of times leadership is about situation. I think even the recent final, I felt that bowling first, the kind of line and length that they hit, it was just short of good length. It's all about being situational, because here's a team that has not lost a single game, playing in front of home crowd, 130,000 people. You needed to be situationally smart and astute about how to respond. So that I thought was the second part, which is being situational. The third is communication. I think you need to have exceptionally strong communication skills, because you're dealing with highs and lows. You're dealing with new opportunities where you need to get people excited. You're sometimes dealing with bad news that you need to be transparent and empathetic to people about. So I think communication plays a huge role. And the last piece is empowerment. As your scope of what you're trying to do gets larger, you can't do it all. And so really surrounding yourself with people who have that same sense of ownership and service almost, versus just optimizing for personal outcomes, and then just empowering them to do the right thing. It's okay to make mistakes, but it's important to learn from them. So creating that environment where you can attract those kind of people, where those people can thrive, I think becomes super important. So those are 3-4 things I kind of feel are important: purpose, situational leadership, communication, and empowerment.
And thanks for sharing, because I feel that some of what, the structure that you kind of shared, and, it's a very simplified way of how we deal with these challenges and the situational leadership. I think very useful for many of us to be able to, learn from that. So thanks for sharing that. And we'll shift gears here and talk about hiring. You've done a lot of interviews, I'm sure many hundreds or maybe 1,000 at Amazon and otherwise. What are some of your inputs when, for people who are applying for Amazon, and how should they go about preparing for the interviews?
Yeah, I think as many people must be familiar by now, the Amazon interview process is quite unique, and that's unique because our culture is unique. And I feel that the interview process is as much a way for Amazon to assess your fit with the company, but it's equally your opportunity to assess whether Amazon is the right place for you. So number one is I encourage people to think about it as a conversation versus a one-way Q&A. Enjoy the process. Number two is it's all about leadership principles. So it's really important that you learn what those are, why those exist, and they're publicly available, so you can just search for them in a search engine and you'll find them. A lot of times I find people have not really thought about it or not even looked at them. That to me is like a bit of a problem. So I think kind of just reflect on those leadership principles, and then use your own experiences to reflect and say, hey, when was I, when did I encounter a situation like that where I had to show backbone, disagree and commit, or where I had to insist on higher standards even though my standards seemed unreasonable. Because those are the examples, those are the defining moments in your leadership career or in your career that shape you, that shape your brand. So spend time in really thinking about those experiences and kind of package your story well. And the last thing is really about packaging the story, right? It's a lot of these stories can be really interesting if told the right way, or they can really fall flat. And it's important that you package them well in a simple, easy to understand format. Don't use too much jargon. Not everybody might understand industry or jargon from your previous company. So really package them for easier consumption. Use the situation, behavior, impact format to tell your story, so that the interviewer can very clearly understand what was the challenge, how did he act in it, what was the impact. And the last thing is ask a lot of questions. Don't just, like I said, it's not a one-way conversation. So ask a lot of questions about the company, about the role, about whatever it is that you have on your mind. And so I think just kind of being fluid and natural and really indexing everything backwards from leadership principles, I feel is a good way of going through the process.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, and we'll continue with the same theme within your own function as you look at payments and Amazon Pay across India. And what are some of the roles that you think you and your teams are hiring? What are the growth areas where you are hiring? What kind of skills are you looking for?
So, I think we are almost like a company within a company, right? Because the payment products that we are building are payment products by themselves tend to be unique, but then we are building them both for our marketplace merchant and external merchants. It's kind of a organization and a business in and of itself, as much as it is a team within Amazon. And we cover every possible function you can think of, from technology to business development, sales, marketing, product management, legal, compliance, risk, HR, finance, what have you. So I think the breadth of opportunities that exist and the breadth of learning potential that exists, I think is immense. But at the heart of it, what we look for is, we don't necessarily look for payment experts, because anybody who claims to be a payment expert, I think should smell the coffee, right? And but what we really look for is people who have a strong builder gene, who are not afraid to make mistakes, but who are great learners, who love to invent new solutions versus just kind of be run rate, if you will, right? And so if you're somebody who like that, and you can be a marketeer, you can be a product person, you can be a technology person, the opportunity to invent and innovate in this space is just so vast. And when we look at the canvas of all emerging countries, cash disposed customers, credit habituated customers, customers who are frustrated with some of the friction in digital payments, and not just consumers, but also merchants. Because merchant experience for us matters as much. When that small store on the street doesn't get their payment, it hurts. And so really it is the canvas is vast. And if you have that builder gene who likes to invent, like I said, like break a few things, make mistakes, learn from it, that's the kind of attitude that we index very highly on.
Well, thank you. And there you go, for all the viewers and listeners. You've got some of the inputs on how you should be looking at it as as you're trying to find the right roles for you. And we are in the last segment now, which is easygoing. So rapid fire round, and we'll ask you some questions, and whatever first comes to your head, you need to answer.
Let me take a deep breath.
And there's a prize to be won.
Okay, all right.
What's your favorite movie or TV show?
Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, nice. What is the latest skill you have learned?
Learning Spanish.
Oh, interesting. Were you a very academically oriented, student at school, or were you more into sports, or a mix of both?
I was a good learner, but my grades did not reflect.
I like that. I can use that, if anybody asks, saying that I was a good learner, just that the grades were not. When you were growing up, was there a role model? Who did you want to grow up as, and who did you look up as?
I never had one. I'd never in life have looked forward as to what I want to be. I just like to be in the moment, and that's just how I was growing up as well. Like I never really had a role model. There was a lot of people that I admired for who they are, but I never thought I should be them.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I don't know if you cook, but if you do, and if you were to invite me, what would you cook?
Food story.
That's a good answer.
Any book or idea that inspired you recently?
I'll end it with cricket. So I'm reading the autobiography of the late Shane Warne. Just taken by just who he was as a person. Just a fierce competitor. Of course, greatly skilled and spent a lot of time perfecting his art. But in the end, it boiled down to his confidence in his abilities. And there's a line in there which says that I think it was his early stages in his test career where he realized that performance was all about confidence. So I think just his mental makeup and how he went about thinking of these things is pretty inspiring.
Interesting. I should get one for that. But thank you. With that, that was it, and you did really well. Thank you so much for all the answers. And here we have a small gift for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So that brings us to the close of this podcast. Thank you for joining us. I hope you liked delving into the world of payments and all of the interesting things that you heard about cricket. Look forward to your inputs and suggestions. And till then, thank you.